welcome back. This is Dr. Scott.
This is Dr. Shiloh. This is episode 34. We have done an amazing job this year of knocking out episodes.
We have. We're going to try and increase it next year, too. I think we can do that.
Oh, man.
We can do it.
Don't drop that on me right now.
We can do that.
No, but I think...
Happy holidays.
Yeah, right. This is mommy and daddy fighting at the dinner table. That was one of our goals, to put out 2 episodes consistently a month, which we have done. And our other goal for this year was joining a podcast network that felt right, and we did that.
Well,
and so
yeah.
Happy just where we're at.
We couldn't be luckier. I mean, seriously, it's such a great match. We love those guys.
Yeah.
And we've also just met amazing people.
I know.
Just really amazing people. You're connecting us with Steve Hodel, who is an amazing guy, and then Rebecca from Dialogue and True Crime Trivia.
Yeah.
That then you hooked them up together.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of an amazing community, and our listeners are part of that community too. I think it's great.
I was thinking about that over Thanksgiving, how grateful I am for all of those connections and just how great everybody has been. So this is a little bit of, it's not the last episode of the year, but a little bit of a roundup, wrap-up episode. So we're going to do some listener questions because we are getting great questions constantly. Like really good topics that maybe we wouldn't have as a standalone episode. I mean, we definitely could.
Yeah.
But this is a good platform for us to just sort of do a quick and dirty, research, answer the question, talk about it, chat a little bit, give you a little bit on a lot of topics.
And some of these questions are also sort of directed towards our personal experience of the kind of work that we do, and they're really smart questions.
Yeah, and there's some fun stuff thrown in here too. So we hope it's a good mix for you today. Anything else you want to bring up? Should we jump in?
Okay, I do want to bring up something. I want to be a complete fanboy. Oh my God, it's the first time I ever had a training with Dr. Reed Malloy.
Finally.
Holy crap.
Psychopathy training, right?
Psychopathy training. It was an entire day. Shiloh, I embarrassed the shit out of myself because I'm doing that thing. Like, you've been with me in trainings where I'm over-eager and I want to over-participate. And so I try and back off of, for one thing, you guys, Reed Malloy is the godfather of this work. I mean, he really, really is. And not only is he super smart and super professional, he's also so easy to listen to.
Right.
Like his presentations are smooth without being slick, is the way I would put it. And you come out of there feeling like you've really learned something. And he's also this amazingly handsome man.
Total silver fox.
Total silver surfer fox, Southern California.
Did you get to talk to him one-on-one?
I didn't. I was too intimidated. I was really intimidated.
He also makes you feel like you're the only person in the room when he's talking to you one-on-one. I was 7 months pregnant when I took his class, and he just asked me about the baby and how things were going, and it was really personable and nice.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if you're a fan of this genre, then please look up Reed Malloy.
Right.
He's got books on Amazon. He is amazing. He explains things in layman's terms that I think are even important for those of us that are in this profession. We need to know how to do that.
Follow him on Twitter. He is constantly posting really fantastic reads and just great articles, and really, mainly working in the area of threat assessment now.
Right.
I think that whenever there's sort of another school shooting or another mass casualty incident, I kind of wait to see what he's going to say in his tweets. And he doesn't rush to judgment on stuff, but also kind of makes you feel safe and comfortable too.
Yeah.
So I enjoy following him.
So that was an amazing training, and probably in the next few episodes I might circle back around, because he goes over the psychopathy bullet points of what meets criteria versus what doesn't, and differentiating, when you're making a diagnosis and when you're making an approach for treatment or for evaluation. It was great. I came away buzzing. At the end of the day, I was just so amped. It was like I'd been drinking Red Bulls all day. I'm telling you.
So today I was looking at our statistics on Spotify, and our psychopathy episode from like 2 years ago was still one of the most streamed this year. Yeah. So people can't get enough of that topic.
Good. Maybe it's time to do a follow-up, sort of a sister episode to it. That would be great.
And then you and I are getting ready to do a presentation together, which we have never presented together, have we? Not in a professional setting, maybe in training?
I don't even think we did in training. I mean, we
did either.
We just collaborated on so many things, and then we did group therapy together, and we consulted on clients, and we've kept up consulting. But no, we haven't. So
this is our first presentation together.
It's kind of a big deal. It's for a law enforcement academy presentation for a threat assessment conference, and it's the big deal. I mean, we're excited about it.
So we're going to be talking about incels, which is, I was just reflecting today on how neat it is that we're starting to see sort of these paths of the podcast and our job come together in different ways that they haven't before.
Right.
Our jobs were sort of jumping off points to the podcast, but now it's kind of feeding back into each other the other way, which is super neat.
Well, and this is going to be interesting because it's going to actually be the first time that really our worlds, I don't want to say collide, because that I don't want them to collide.
No.
I want them to intersect, and I love what we've got planned to do, but it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. So should we go to some listener questions?
Let's start with the listener questions.
Okay.
God, you got some good ones. You really got some good ones.
It's all our people out there. So from our friends at the Tennis Podcast, which I cannot get enough of, Nick and Brandon, you guys, if you need something non-true crime, even though they do some true crime top 10 lists every once in a while, please go listen to them. They are hilarious.
They're great.
So they ask if you could know the 100% truth on any unsolved case, what case would you choose? Want to go ahead?
No, I'm going to let you start because I'm basically following your lead. I mean,
Oh my gosh. Okay. So, I know I have said before, and I kind of want to expound on this, that JonBenet Ramsey is like my holy grail. If I had any question to ask, that's the answer I would want. And I think there are also some other common ones that run through my mind, like, of course, Black Dahlia. And being from Southern California, I can't help it. Like Tupac and Biggie, I would love to just have definitive answer on what went on there.
Yeah.
I'm also listening to a podcast right now called Slow Burn. That's an investigation into those murders.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which is great. So, but those feel obvious choices. So I think I'm going to actually make my answer about the hundreds of women and girls who have been murdered in Juarez, Mexico since 1993. So if people aren't familiar with it, basically there have been these brutal kidnappings, rapes, murders of hundreds of women and girls in Mexico. They're often factory workers right at the border, and Juarez is right across from El Paso. So it's right at the border. There are some American companies that have factories on the other side in Mexico. And like to give you an idea, by 2005, there were like 370 women that had been found, and I'm talking like either dumped in mass graves where there's finding like 8 bodies at a time, or just out dumped in the desert alone. In 2011 alone, 300 women were killed.
It's just horrific.
And there have been some people that have been prosecuted for 1, 2, 3, like maybe a handful, but the theories have been everything from, an American serial killer to the cartels and some other sort of organized crime. That is it just a matter of the lawlessness and blood sport of people in that part of Mexico because it is so violent and dangerous?
It's brutal, yeah. And law enforcement is struggling to maintain any kind of power or presence in that area. I mean, and law enforcement is completely at a level of personal danger that is unmatched by anything in the U.S.
Right.
Completely unmatched. Like, they don't even identify. It's almost like the new series Watchmen. Mm-hmm. When they do raids, they don't show their faces and they hide their identities, and yet the cartels find out and wipe out entire families.
Right.
Do you have a theory? Do you think it's...
I don't. I had read a book. It's called The Daughters of Juarez, and I'll put the information in the show notes. It was really good. It was done by 3 female authors, and the main author, she was a news reporter down there, which I thought was very brave of her to put together this book, bringing light to it. I know there's also been several documentaries. I think there's also been some adaptations and like movie of the week type movies done on it. I don't know. I thought it was really interesting. There was a theory about it being the bus drivers that would drive the women to the factories, to and from, and that it was sort of a ring of them. And a bus driver did, in fact, get convicted of, I think, 3 or 4 murders. But these numbers are just insane. So,
also the idea that it's mass graves. I mean, unless when they talk about mass graves, they mean dumping spots. So, is a mass grave where one particular bus driver or group of individuals who are perpetrators, do they use the same dumping place?
I see. Yeah. I don't know. The one particular one that I'm thinking of more recently where there were 8 bodies found, I don't know if they were able to determine if some had been there longer than others or if they were all killed at the same time or what have you. But it's horrific. It's so frustrating, and I pick it, not because of the horrific nature of it, because I just don't think we'll ever really get a good answer, and that's horrific in and of itself.
Right, and there's a parallel for me. The highway killings of Indigenous women in Canada except that a lot of the bodies just disappear. Like they just disappear, and they aren't finding the bodies in the same way.
Yeah, but they're still not these numbers.
Yeah, and
it's still, I understand the similarities, though, the feeling it leaves you with.
Yeah, and the thing that is particularly discomforting for me is the idea of, the misogyny and marginalization of women in those communities. Particularly in your example that you're talking about, is that they're factory workers, but, they're not necessarily all Mexican. They're from even more rural parts of other South American countries that have, immigrated north to take these very low-paying jobs.
Right.
And, a lot of sections of the culture there really are steeped in machismo and patriarchy, and women are just seen as second, third, fourth, fifth-class citizens, objects to be used and tossed aside.
Exactly.
And that complicates it. Certainly we have aspects of that in the U.S. right now that we're moving forward, but I think that's what really makes me uncomfortable about it. Right. It's just that these aren't even people. They don't even look at they don't look at the victims, these poor women, as people. They look at them as objects or animals to be used and discarded,
right.
Which is horrible.
Yeah, I think it is one of the instances in which, when I use the term objectified, I'm not even necessarily saying, sexually. That
absolutely, it's even less than that.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah. Anyway. Well, so what's yours?
Okay, I'm going to piggyback on certainly one of yours, which is JonBenét.
Okay.
I'm just, I was always fascinated by it. I'm even more fascinated. I've become more fascinated by it because of you. Your obsession.
And we talked about this with Rebecca at our live show just a little bit.
Right. I don't want to get sued.
Allegedly.
Like some people are getting sued.
Right.
But I have a strong feeling.
Okay.
After watching a couple of interviews in the last few years, I have a very strong idea of who it is and how it happened, which to me is the most logical explanation for it.
Sure.
And that's what makes it infuriating for me, is that it's so clear to me what it is, and yet money and power and position are protecting somebody I mean, at this point, just fucking come clean. I mean, I know that's
I know.
It's
that's too logical.
It is. It's too logical, but it frustrates me.
Sure.
So, and then the other thing, I have two others. One that I've hopped on a couple of times is the exhaustive podcast Cold talked about Susan Powell's disappearance, which it's very clear that her husband killed her. That Josh killed her. But the body was never found.
Right.
And for her family, for her, especially because you've heard her voice, we've heard her recordings, we've heard her journals. You come away from that podcast. I mean, it wrecked me. It was a tough one to listen to, but I will say it was very well done, and I was pulled into her world, and I am moved by how it was a perfect example of coercive control and the cycle of violence, and how she continually marginalized her life and narrowed her life because of this sick individual and the influence his family had on them. And, she just deserved, all the victims deserve better than this. But, for him to be such a psychopath, to take himself and his children out at the end and then leave this mystery of what happened to her.
Right.
I mean, it's clear she's in like a well or a mine shaft somewhere, just dumped. I mean, it'll probably be found in a couple of 100 years when somebody, but it's just tragic to me.
It is. It's that unknown factor. And today the Cold podcast posted family Christmas picture that was taken 10 years ago today.
Shoot.
And God, she's just, you look at her and you're like, you are so much better than the man that you married. And I don't mean better than status or whatever, but just, gosh.
Well, but
awful.
No, you bring up a great point, because I mean, Cold is the kind of podcast where when you listen to it and then you start talking about it, and like you just triggered a whole bunch of things. I mean, when you say that she was a better person, she was. Like, this woman cared so much about her children, and despite her husband being this just complete asshole, she was walking to work miles each direction because her devotion was to be taking care of those kids.
Yeah.
And anyway, I could go on, but I feel the same way now after becoming part of Crawl Space about Mara Murray.
Yeah.
And now that Tim and Lance are following up with other similar cases, it's just, you go down a rabbit hole of all these women who have disappeared, and it's an indictment of our society. I mean, maybe this has always happened. Maybe this is what mankind is like, and we've been doing this for generations.
Sure.
It's just that now we live in a world of instant communication where we're actually having to look at the fact that these things happen.
Oh, absolutely.
But
absolutely.
There's such a haunting image in Missing Mara Murray where they describe the search dog following the trail and then just sitting in the middle of the road. So it's clear she was taken into a car, she got into a car.
But it's also the absence of anything, just the vanished piece.
Absolutely. It's like an episode of Twilight Zone.
Right.
It's like the episode of the Twilight Zone where the little girl falls out of bed into another dimension. I mean, and she's just gone, Yeah. So, and then finally, the other one which is more on the sort of the area of high strangeness, or what we call high weirdness, is Missing 411. And there's the author David Paulides that I've talked about before. He's been interviewed several times on Mysterious Universe. And look, I mean, the guy is a little out there, and he goes for a lot of Bigfoot and Sasquatch theories, which, going squatching, I'm telling you. But his series of books called Missing 411, and there's one major one, and there's a documentary. I think he really brings up some good questions. And what's interesting to me is that Skepticamp and Data Skeptic podcast supposedly debunked and disputed Paulides' claims of how many people disappeared. And they basically said every single thing can be accounted for, people falling or getting lost or being killed by wildlife, and that statistically there are no outliers. And I've been looking for their actual correlations, and I can't find any of their research. Now, I'm not saying that Polich and the other people at Skeptics are withholding it. They're not. I just haven't got my hands on it. However, what was established in that in Missing 411 is that his interview with rangers indicate that even park rangers are saying, hey, the National Park Service is not releasing data on how many people disappear from here. So if the National Park Service is not releasing data, then how is Polich and his compatriots, how are they actually doing their studies? Now, I could be corrected, and if somebody out there wants to educate me on it,
it's not making sense.
I'm totally happy to be educated. I love being wrong, but I think that I'm not saying that aliens or Sasquatch is grabbing kids and disappearing, but there have been some very, very odd disappearances and things that can't be accounted for, where bodies are found or remains are found, and from miles, like remains of children being found miles and miles and miles from where they disappeared with no tears in their clothing. So no animals of prey tore into them, and it's weird. So
and the timing, like not gone for that long, and
there are several of them that weren't gone long enough, or there were found, but the distance between their missing point and their location point couldn't have been covered, and that's
insane.
So anyway, that's our answer to that one.
All right, long-winded answer. I know we didn't pick just one, but those are the ones that we're long-term passionate about, and then sort of newly on our radar. So our next question comes from a very active listener and social media presence with us, and it's Chris Brewer.
Hey, Chris.
So he says the question is, do you feel social media use has contributed to the recent rise in adolescent suicide? Great question.
It's a great question, and I mean, the stats show that it has, right?
Yeah. Okay. Next question. No, I'm just kidding.
No, because I'll say this. Like, I lecture on this to law enforcement every couple of weeks. I do a presentation on adolescent mental health issues, and the world is very different now for adolescents. Mm-hmm. Bullying for someone of my generation, if you were bullied, stopped basically at 2:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Because that's when you were heading home from school. Those days are gone. Bullying is, and when I talk about bullying, I mean chronic, unrelenting activities that can include cyberbullying, verbal abuse, physical abuse, chronic and ongoing. Not one or two incidents that are sort of the rites of passage of children, but the amount of cyberbullying that crosses the line into cyber stalking just continues to increase every year.
There's no relief period.
None.
When you take that into account. So just to give people a perspective, by 2017, there were 47% more suicides among people aged 15 to 19 than there were in the year 2000. And it's now the second leading cause of death for teens, behind traffic collisions, which has always kind of been at the top. We're seeing suicide rates in the population rise overall, but it's really spiking with adolescents. And then it always sort of, for years and years and years and years, the highest risk population was basically like 65 and over.
Right.
And
white males, 65
white males,
and over.
If you're white, if you're male, if you're 65 and over, those were all high risk factors. But now it has dropped down a decade. It's between 55 and 65 now. So that's the first time we've seen that trend just in area of suicide alone. So there's a lot going on.
There is. And also, I think you brought up the point in your notes that I was looking over, that there's been a noted increase in black male suicide, which is really significant because African American populations have never had a high suicide rate.
Nope.
Despite many other cultural and societal pressures that they've
Sure.
had to endure, that has not been a factor, and that is something that we really need to look at.
Yeah,
what's contributing to that.
All of these things are things we have to keep an eye on. And as we've said before with other types of research, once you start to see a new trend or things change, that's when the research begins. So I think we have a pretty good idea of what is contributing to some of these things, but we still need more time to understand it and have the empirical backing there. I was also going to say, with teens, I found some interesting articles in looking at the opioid epidemics and addiction and the stressors that come on with that, and the way that has spiked in this country in the last several years has got to be a contributing factor. But I think we're also in a time where there's less stigma about suicide in general. And I kind of wobble back and forth in between just general population. If we're looking at adolescents, and then also what I know in law enforcement communities about high rates of suicide. And of course, as my job as a law enforcement psychologist, that's a hot topic right now. We talk about it all the time. Prevention, awareness.
Well, because it's spiking.
Well,
right?
Yeah. Well, yes and no. I don't want to go into the numbers too much, but in NYPD, 10 in the first 10 months of the year. I mean, it's insane
That's
numbers.
Insane.
But a lot of it, so in law enforcement, we are just now talking about it. We didn't talk about it. It often got misclassified as accidental deaths because you want the families to still get the pension. You don't want the stigma on the department. You want to be able to give them, proper funeral services without people thinking, oh, well, shit, he killed himself. Why are we going to honor this person? It was covered up a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that is also shown to be true when it comes to children, where either parents have tried to cover up what are intentional suicides of their children, and or there's documents of coroners changing reports as to not bring on shame to the family, especially in smaller rural areas. So I think we're shifting with that to where people aren't doing that as much. We're looking at it for what it is, and then automatically the numbers are going to rise just based on that.
That's true.
So I think...
So we're open and we're looking at taking a broader and more accurate stance than we have in the past.
Yeah, more accurate. But also talking about it and the awareness and lessening the stigma is helping people get access to mental health care too. So
there was something in the news just recently about a funeral mass for a teenager, just apparently an amazing young man, and the priest in the middle of the presentation basically said, "Well, it's too bad he's not going to heaven." And just devastated the family. I mean, you just trying to wrap your mind around. And look, respect to your beliefs, but that was not the time. That was not the time to be delivering that message, whatever that particular belief system was. I mean, I understand that, for some faiths that's completely incompatible, but to traumatize the family in the way that was done is just really insulting.
It is. There's also a psychologist out of San Diego State University, Jean Twenge. She's been looking into a lot of the cyberbullying. She's also looking at the issue of sleep deprivation as related to being on phones all the time. Insomnia is also linked to suicidal ideation. But she's talking about these factors basically just affecting teens' mental health. And there's a study that supported some of her correlations, saying that teens who spend more time on their phones are suffering from more depression symptomology. So,
did they differentiate into male versus female?
No, didn't see any breakdown.
Because that was an article that had come up in one of the presentations I did last year that I found very interesting, is that it backs up everything you're saying, but it further differentiates between male and female adolescents, because they were saying that young women, girls, will be completely sleep deprived because they're up chatting for hours and hours till 3, 4 in the morning for these non-ending conversations. And then, I mean, I'm sure there's also an aspect to it of, being exposed to blue light and the light waves that your retinas are picking up and sending like this conflicting information about your sleep cycle to your brain.
Yep.
But yeah, it's something that really, I mean, as a parent, I think that would be something that would be wise for parents to understand, is that they need to lock those phones up at 9 o'clock at night, and they get them back in the morning, or lock down all the computer access and get your sleep.
Right, because at some point the parents have to go to sleep too. You can't go check on your kid every hour to see if they're still on their phone. So, all right.
But I wanted to add something also about that is really important. This is something that, having come from a pretty substantial career in entertainment, I'd still live in that world, through my circle of friends and people that are still in it. And I was so furious when 13 Reasons Why came out, because I remember watching the first episode and thinking, shit, they did not think this through. They really did not think this through. And what was really, I mean, there was a 28.9% increase in suicide rates among teenagers. That's really, really significant.
Wow.
Yeah.
In what period of time following?
It was associated between the ages of 10 and 17 in the month that it was released, the month following the release, which was April 2017.
Jesus Christ.
And the idea that, there are so many things in entertainment, and, I get it if you have a good idea, and certainly that was an important message. I get what they thought they were doing,
sure,
but to not think it through was really, really bad.
But do you think it was not thinking it through, or do you think someone was like, okay, we thought it through, but this is going to be a gold mine?
I don't know. I hope not. I hope not, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, so that the other thing is, there are some really, really great articles. One of them that I highly recommend if anybody wants to go back to October 30th, 2018, Time Magazine did an article on Generation Z, talking about the levels of stress in today's youth. Mm-hmm. And 90% of the individuals polled that fit that age generation, 90%, reported unbelievably high levels of stress. And we know from a study that was done in the mid-90s that basically the amount of stress that today's high schoolers are under is what would have put people in an institution in the 50s.
Right.
But we just keep boiling the frog. We keep turning up the heat, and we've got longer work days, lower wages, increased costs all across the country. I mean, we're going through a very difficult time. These are all factors that affect.
So in the 50s, you and I could have met in a mental institution.
Oh,
instead.
We totally could have.
We would have been there.
Oh my God, we would have been doing
roommates.
Musical numbers.
Well, we did do ballroom dancing when the power at our internship went out.
That was great.
Right.
I put on my boombox and we did the cha-cha. It was awesome.
Okay, so our Instagram follower @_m.aci asks, "What's the best part of your job and what's the worst part of your job?" Go ahead.
You want to go?
Why don't you start?
So, I don't want to jinx it, so I'm knocking on vinyl wood right now. I love my job. Every time I say that, I feel like an asshole. Really, who loves their job? But I do. Dude, I catch myself driving home at work from night going, I love my job. Mm-hmm. I get to work with amazing. I'm not saying that it's perfect all the time and there are difficult things, but the best part of my job is I'm doing something that I am so suited for, and it makes me feel like I wish everyone took the time not necessarily to look just at what your dreams are and what your aspirations are, but to really think about how do you want to feel in your job. Not about how you want to feel about yourself or what you think that job is going to bring you materially, which is important. Mm-hmm. You got to pay your bills. I get it. But the idea of I just feel like I'm a puzzle piece that just found its slot.
Same, yeah.
And I want that for everyone. And this is what I would say to anybody is like, if you're having any doubts about what you do, go find an expensive career counselor and pay whatever you got to pay to get a battery of tests and get that evaluation. I happened to fall into this after a terrible 7-month gig at another place that was not the right fit for me. It was just not the right fit. Plus, but I just love,
what makes you love it? What is the best part?
So for the day job, so my small private practice, I love the intimacy of doing personal therapy work. And I love not doing it full time. I love that I have 8 clients a week. A couple of them half time, every couple of weeks, that I get to dive deep into the human condition. And I work when I'm in private practice, I work from a modality called narrative. So although I pull from all these other different sort of modalities and trainings, what I do is I always tell my clients, look, you may feel off balance right now, but you're still the expert in your life. You have expertise that you don't know you have, and I'm on the journey with you. I've got some expertise, and I've got a perspective that may help you see things in a different way, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you what to do. Or there are going to be times that we're going to sit and we're going to argue about things. That's going to be the way I do therapy, and I just love that. Yeah. I love that part of it, and then in the day job I do here, working with law enforcement and the community it is incredibly stimulating, and I never know what I'm coming into. Like, it could be something that is evaluating a stalker, getting services to someone who came here from another country and got lost in the system in Skid Row, and we're figuring out what's going on with them and how we can help them. It's something different, and I'm also handling, as weird as this sounds, I have like 10 of those cases going simultaneously. Right. It's amazing. I just love it.
And it's fun because it's figuring something out. It really...
It's strategy.
You're doing investigative work.
Yeah.
From a psychological perspective, what more else could you want?
Yeah. I love that, like, I could get a case and I may be talking to the head of a psychiatric hospital in Ohio, and then I might be talking to a psychiatrist at a hospital in another state, and then I may be talking to the FBI, their branch in Austin, tying all of these things together, trying to figure out what's going on in this particular situation. And it's so stimulating. I just love it.
Yeah. So I think mine, logistically, for me, it's the variety of my job.
Right.
Variety is key for me. I will get bored even if I'm doing something that I love, but if it's the same thing. Even prior to this, though, I was doing individual, I was doing group, I was doing assessment. That's enough variety for me. But this is variety in just a different way. It's me getting out of the office. I get to see clients. I get to do my clinical work. And that's sort of like a different thing every day as well. But then I get to go to a division and, walk around and kind of do my rounds and talk about how things are going with the captains. And then I get to be on call once a quarter and go out with a SWAT team and sit in an armored vehicle with a vest on and talk about negotiations. So, that if I had to pick one piece, like, that's the most fun part. It is also the most exhausting and can come in the middle of the night. So I'm glad
because the stakes are very high.
The stakes are very high, and it's nice not to have to be woken up in the middle of the night all the time. But I love it. I love it. I think about. I'm just going to pinpoint on the clinical side, whether it's here or in my private practice too. I think when something just clicks with the client and they're finally putting in the effort to help themselves with their own mental wellness, I just love that little turning point. I don't even know what to call it.
I'm not a parent.
Right.
But it feels to me very parental, and I don't want to say that, I don't mean that in a diminishing way to any of my clients, but when you see someone make the connection and the light goes on for them and they integrate like information that you've been discussing with them for 2 years,
right,
but they haven't gotten to a point where they were allowing themselves for it all to come together, and then you're there, it's unbelievable. I love it.
It is. There's just, you just sort of sit back and you're like, yes, this is what all of this has been for, and that's just a really neat feeling. Other than that, the people that I get to work with on a daily basis, on projects, on, just that I interface with are just the best people at this agency. They're fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, I was late here because I ran into somebody walking from the parking structure to here that I had to stop and chat with that, I knew from one of my divisions. But you just get to meet some really neat people and do some really neat things.
Yeah. So what's the hardest part for you?
I'm going to pinpoint this directly to working in law enforcement psychology, but it was hard to come up with one, again, because we love our jobs. But I think it's that sinking feeling when I hear about something bad happening, like an officer being involved in a shooting or getting injured on the job. And sometimes I hear it on the news first. Sometimes it's on the weekend or it's at night or it's the first news story in the morning, and I haven't checked my email yet,
right,
and I don't know yet. And one, I think it's is this somebody that I know personally? Or just knowing that there's an entire family, meaning like blood family, but also the bigger family of law enforcement that is going to be impacted by this person's injury or death, or very traumatic situation. I mean, they may not be, killed or necessarily injured, but being that I have been through 2 shootings and I've been in critical incidents and traumatic situations, I know what that's like. And so I think hearing that kind of gives me that sinking feeling until I hear that they're okay, or I get a little bit more information about how we can help. So that weaves back into the great part about my job is that at least I can do something about it.
Yeah, you have some facility.
Yeah.
I think for me, the hardest part, there are a couple of aspects. One is that when in private practice, it's not hard for me to take a step back and brush it off. I mean, part of becoming a therapist, whether you're a social worker, an MFT, or a psychologist, your training teaches you to keep an emotional distance, a healthy emotional distance, and healthy boundaries so that you don't walk home at the end of the night. I mean, and I've worked with really difficult clients that were very unstable over a period of years. But I can't carry that stuff home. And I did as a younger clinician, as a less experienced clinician, and it takes a toll on you. I mean, it was not good. And I've learned something very important is that you have to accept that at the end of the session, as long as there's not an emergency, as long as you're not concerned about danger to self or danger to others, is that you have to let it go, and you have to do it for yourself, and you actually have to do it for them so that they can learn. It's like if you have someone that wants to call you 6 times a week, and I want to touch in, and putting those boundaries, as difficult as that is what's really healthy for them. So that was very hard for me at the beginning.
Right.
But in the day job, I think the hardest thing is that, for the successes that we have so many people that disappear off the map. I don't mean like I was saying earlier, like missing 411, but I mean people that everything is in place for you. I mean, look, we live in Southern California, and there is no better place to have challenges with your mental health than Southern California. You cannot swing a cat by a tail without hitting a therapist on a corner.
Right.
I'm telling you.
Or just the social resources.
But
available.
Exactly. And if you are lower income, you have all of an enormous, probably the largest mental health organization with amazing clinicians and administration. And but seeing people that are not ready to do it, not ready to take that step to move forward, is really difficult. And, sometimes it's because of addiction. Addiction is a huge challenge here it's across the country. But watching the impact of meth on the lower income populations of Southern California has really that's a difficult one for me.
And just when you just don't know, when all the things are set up for someone to take advantage of, and then for some reason they drop off. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so our next question comes from Sasha. She's a listener, and she says, I was wondering if you could explain more about the psychology of someone interested in the genre of true crime. So I didn't do any research on this. I just thought I would talk more off the cuff. But I know this has come up a lot lately, especially because, true crime is sort of having its moment.
Right. It's starting to get asked a lot, and we talked a little bit about it with Rebecca.
Right. I think were we talking more specifically about women being interested in true crime?
I think so.
Yeah.
And there's certainly,
yeah.
The true crime genre, if women were not so interested in it, it would not be probably the top most popular genre in podcasts now, because, women are listening, and supporting it, and we have a lot of really fantastic female podcast hosts that have found a voice in this genre. It's kind of amazing.
Absolutely.
There's some not so great stuff out there, but I'm continually impressed by finding another one that's
there's not enough time to listen to the ones that do interest me.
And you would think that people would run out of material, but there's for one thing, it's oh my God, there's more crime than I ever thought of.
Well,
it's
a little concerning, but it's hard for me to put myself, to say, okay, what is it about it that interests me? Because I come from a family where it was just part of their career to work in the area of true crime and law enforcement. So it's hard for me to say this is why when people ask, how'd you get into it? It was just always there. I guess, my sister consumes some of it, but it's not like she went into a career or anything like that with it. But I don't know what it is. I think those of us where this is our interest, we ask this question because probably at some point we're like, well, are we a weirdo because we like this? Oh, no, now we've found our people, so it's okay to talk about. But I wonder if you really looked at the numbers of different interests, would it be so different? And is it just because it is a weird topic or a taboo topic, or it's about human suffering that makes us feel like it's weird to be interested in it? And that's a more interesting perspective.
That is a very, very interesting perspective. Why are we even asking the question?
Yeah, because people are into bird watching. Okay, what makes one person interested in something and not interested in something else?
Well, we remember years ago we went to the Heritage Square the first time, and it was all about Victorian death rituals and sort of the reality of death up until the 20th century was, you had to have a lot of kids, because if you didn't, it's likely that a good third of them are going to die.
Right.
Previous generations had a different relationship to death and survival than our current world does, than our current culture. So I think that informs part of it, is that we look at it in a different way. Murder was just something different in the past. And certainly if it was murder of women or murder of children, it was different because those were marginalized communities. But there is a great Mental Floss article, and Mental Floss is either hit or miss, but we'll post this. They do some good receipts. One of the ones that I was really glad they brought up was a law review that was written by Megan Boersma that the study shows that one of the main theories is that women are drawn to true crime because it's preparational. And that may actually be really, and I use this term a lot, a biological imperative, that women have an innate sense of, because they have to protect and nurture their young, that they have to be more situationally aware, and that watching true crime is almost like it feels like it's preparation.
Right.
And I mean, and actually I think there's truth to it. I mean, it's really hilarious when you go on some of the message boards for different podcasts and everybody's going, we all talk about how Forensics Files has changed everything. It's like, you idiot. Why?
Right.
Why would you dismember the body in the house?
Yeah.
Like, that's just, they're going to spray luminol. Like, everybody.
Just strangle them so there's no blood.
Exactly.
What's wrong with you?
Because everybody has this, has like a vocabulary over the past 10 years that has continued to increase, especially with things like CSI.
Right.
But also, I think one of the basic levels is that evil fascinates us.
Yeah.
Especially like if you are a person that is compassionate and you care about people, the idea of being evil on one hand is almost like a psychological release, like the fantasy of it, sort of like when we have intrusive thoughts about, oh my gosh, this baby is so cute, I want to bite this baby.
Yeah.
Like, because there's a different area of our brain that is crossed. I mean, the baby biting thing actually is a thing. It's that we're getting crossed wires in our brain because it's cuteness overload. And
Right.
the cuteness overload is stimulating areas that are generally associated with eating and survival.
Oh my gosh. I want to bite Baby Yoda from Mandalorian.
Oh my God. And the memes are unending.
Hilarious.
They're so good. They're so good. We Can't Look Away from a Train Wreck is another one.
Well, also, we were talking about your job earlier and the intrigue and the strategy, and it's a mystery. It's something to figure out. We like that. There's a beginning, middle, and end to most stories, and an episode of Dateline or Forensic Files, and that I think that's also human nature to sort of have this thing to figure out and that you like. So I don't know. I don't have any research-backed stuff to give you, Sarah, but I think it's really interesting.
Well, there's also like a very primitive, not so much the. Before there were sitcoms and before there were, the sort of the ubiquity of different forms of entertainment, if we go back to the most primitive civilizations of how we evolved as a species, storytelling has always been at the center of oral tradition and cautionary tales, like Grimm's fairy tales. The original ones are bloody, right? And they were told and they were written in that way so that children would learn a lesson and the adults would remember them, because that helped you survive as well. So I think that being part of it, I think that's a big part of it. For me, you talked about how you
were born into it, right? From being in a law enforcement family, I wasn't. I mean, I did not read murder mysteries. I didn't. My entire family was brought into it because of a crime, right?
And it was jarring to all of us, and it changed the course of all of our lives. And it was a horrific thing that I wish had never happened, because people were hurt, families were hurt for generations. But the other side of it is where we are now is, where you are right now in your life is a result of the crucible that you went through at another time. So, I don't have regrets except for, the victims of the crime.
Sure.
But that certainly was my intro into it, where I started seeing life through a different lens. And I think that my pull towards true crime and even switching into this career was so that I could understand the motivations of human behavior and it's also like that, looking at, and Leah, we had a fantastic supervisor when we first met, Dr. Leah Chankin. And one of the most simple but jarring things she ever said to me when I was trying to understand something horrible that a client had done, and yet I didn't think that the client was a bad person, but he had done a terrible, terrible thing. And, she had the most simple response, which was, Scott, good people do bad things, and sometimes bad people do good things.
Right.
So it was that idea that you have to pull yourself back from black and white thinking in order to really understand the world that you live in.
Yeah, so much about it. I think the true crime popularity now is challenging that and giving an empathetic look at some of this stuff. Like we've talked so much about, people are starting to peel back layers and realize, okay, I can't just put this person in the box of terrible, evil, monster, whatever. Let me actually see what's going on here.
How did they get there?
Yeah.
Even if it was a crime of passion and they, quote unquote, should have known better. Well, let's look back. And I'm not saying that, like, let's absolve them of responsibility, but I'm saying let's look at the context. How did this person get here? Mm-hmm. That's fascinating to me.
It is. Good question. Our second question from Sasha, who happens to be a middle school teacher. She wants to know, is there anything educators can better do to prevent future violence?
So I'm going to take that one because it's basically a big chunk of what I do in my day job. So Sasha, one of the most important thing is collaboration and integration of resources. And what I mean by that is if you're working in a public school system or at a charter or a magnet or a private school, regardless of what environment it is, there has to be open lines of communication. And that necessarily can't come from the educators themselves. Like, that has to come from the top down. I think that an educator who sees a necessity for this can certainly be an advocate and can inspire change in a system, but it is absolutely necessary for schools to have a plan of assessing when threats are present, and there's tons of resources online. I mean, there are, even if you are working at a rural school in the middle of nowhere and you think you've got limited resources, there are incredible threat assessment and prevention plans available online through educational organizations. It's just a matter of getting everybody tied in. Mm-hmm. Because if you have one administrator who says, well, that's never going to happen here.
Oh, Lord.
That's going to be a problem. That's going to be a real problem.
Yeah.
But it's about educators educating themselves on what is problematic. And I often say this to cops that I work with, and I also believe very strongly that educators have this as well. If you're an educator and you've been doing it for more than 3 years, you already have a built-in radar, a built-in sixth sense for when something is off. And so when it feels off about a student, then you have to investigate further. You have to go the extra mile and find out what's going on at home and see what the baseline for behaviors are. And if there are things that are concerning, and basically if you're a true crime fan, you can basically identify those things. If a kid is preoccupied with violence, that's
talking about death or dying a lot.
That's a marker. If suddenly there's a massive change in a child's behavior, certainly in women and young women, girls, if you see a change in hygiene, that is a really, really strong indicator that something's going on. It could be just depression or it could be molestation, but that's a major marker because young girls are usually socialized very well for grooming and hygiene.
Do schools have essentially like threat assessment consultants?
They can hire.
Okay.
They can hire threat assessment consultants, but it also depends. I mean, we're lucky here. I mean, LAUSD has unbelievable programs. They have their own police force. They have their own police threat assessment team. Department of Mental Health works with LAUSD in an amazing program called START, which is Strategic Threat Response Evaluation and Assessment Team. And it used to be school, but they've kind of expanded. And they are headed by amazing supervisors and amazing clinicians, and they jump on these things, whenever there's a potential threat. But so we have a system in place, and if you don't have a system in place, then what I would say is you need to collaborate with some of your other teachers, and you need to go to the school board and say, what do we have in place? because this is going to happen. And that's, I mean, it's a frightening and unfortunate truth about the culture today,
age, yeah.
And regardless of how you feel about gun rights or gun ownership, since the assault weapon ban was dropped, that's when we saw the increase in these kind of things. And I don't think that the answer is arming teachers.
Oh, no, I don't think so.
You arm your teachers with information. So having a threat response team, having mental health resources in the school for children is immensely important. And if you don't have the money to do it, then you guys are going to have to find a way to connect with another agency that will do it. And it could be going to the PTA, going to the school board, and saying, hey, look, there's this whole booklet online for teachers and schools on how to prepare for these things. That's what I mean, that's an overview. There are like specific things that we could talk about it, but the important thing is to not let anybody bury it. And one of the challenges in private schools is that private schools are driven financial forces, and they need to keep money coming in, and they want to keep their reputation clean, so they may have a tendency to bury or hide those kind of influences, and that only perpetuates the problem, I think. So learn what to look for in problematic situations in the environment. Look for resources online, of which there are tons, and if you need any, I'll look some up for you. And also keep open the lines of communication. If you're seeing something that's problematic, then you consult with your colleagues, you consult with administration, and don't let anybody tell you no when you know what you're talking about.
So Michelle from Facebook asks, how do you prevent your work from bleeding into your personal and family lives without sacrificing your own brain health? I love the way she formed this question. First of all, I teach a lot about this, in stress management courses for law enforcement, and I hate the term work-life balance because it will never be balanced, and I think it's an unreasonable expectation.
That's really a good point.
To put on ourselves. So I do talk about bleed over, actually, in the ways that our work can bleed over into family life and vice versa, actually. But I usually like to talk about how to blend the two, work-life blend instead of work-life balance, because one is always going to be demanding more of you than the other at any given time, and that will change. You just have to figure out what works for you and your family. So personally, I tend to compartmentalize well, just kind of naturally. I think even before I worked in law enforcement, but I'm sure that absolutely helped. But also, I think what we're really talking about is just self-care here and how do we take care of ourselves. So do you want to share a little bit about what you do for self-care?
I mean, I work out a lot.
Of thought to?
Yeah, I mean, I give thought to it, especially I'm very, from my previous incarnations of a career, I'm very body aware. Mm-hmm. So I have things that tell me when I'm off, and I recognize it. Like, if I'm having... I go through the HALT model, for one thing, is that HALT, H-A-L-T, is hungry, angry, lonely, tired.
Right.
So, and hungry also means thirsty. And what's crazy to me is that because I go into these kind of, if I'm at home working on a project, I can go into the zone, or if I'm at work, I can go into the zone, and after a couple of hours, that will magically disappear. I'll suddenly be feel off. And the first thing I'm like, wait, am I hydrated?
Right.
So basically that's just I do try and hit a balance between hitting all of those corners. Like, have I taken my vitamins? Have I exercised? Have I stretched? Have I done a couple of yoga poses? And sometimes in the middle of the day, I'll come in here in this little interrogation room, and I'll do about 5 minutes of yoga or breathing.
That's awesome.
But also, having good friends, that you can reach out to. I mean, a social life is very important, even though I think it's hard to be a hard partier or anything when we have careers like this in today's world. But having a social circle, reaching out to family, having hobbies, and I want to go back to what you were saying. I really like the idea that you're saying that it's not going to be in balance, and putting that pressure on yourself to think that there is a balance is unrealistic. But what we can do, if we can't balance it, you can at least make the decision to pull away from things that are really out of balance.
Mm-hmm. That's a good way to put it.
And sometimes things really do get out of balance, and pull away from it. I mean, ultimately, if you pull away and disengage emotionally and intellectually, you have a better idea of looking at the true perspective and where you need to put your time and your energy.
Yeah. I think it's not just about self-care. My self-care is pretty basic. Like for me, I have to take a bath every single night. I know there's like 1,000 memes that are like, self-care is not taking bubble baths. For Shiloh, it is. I get 20 minutes where I don't have to talk to anyone. Don't bother mommy. This is my downtime for the evening. But I don't need much more than that. I need it every day on my work days, but spending time with my family and my friends is what I have on the other days. I think it's also we're talking about boundaries here that you're setting for yourself between work and home and those not bleeding over. I don't take any literal work home with me. I don't write notes from home. I don't say, oh my gosh, I can't finish this in my workday. I'll just do it at home tonight. I don't do any of that. I could have notes piling up on my desk, but I'll get them all done on Friday before I leave the office. You just have to find what little boundaries work for you. When I first started this job, I was able to hook up my email, so it alerted me on my cell phone. I took those alerts off because I felt a pull to look at it and see what it was every time that little red dot lit up.
Yeah.
So I turned that off. If I want to look at it, I look at it. Great. I also, my husband and I have, depending on positions we have worked in, there has to be understanding with your family, too, about it. So he's worked positions where he's been on call, and that means that phone's going to ring in the middle of the night, and I can't get upset about it. That's what he's doing and what he loves to do. Now I'm the one that's on call sometimes. So my phone's going to be ringing, emails are going to be buzzing through. I can't turn it, put it on silent mode. And we just have an understanding and support that that's fine and that works and that's what we're doing. So I see it cause a lot of problems in relationships when the work is coming home too much. And I think just each individual person has to see what works for them.
Yeah.
But, I think it's a hybrid of self-care and boundaries. I have great social support with friends and family. Other than that, I think having a creative outlet is really great. I feel like this is our creative. This is it for me. I went many years of my life without having a creative outlet, and really didn't discover that was something that I needed until, several years ago. I started that like travel advice and a travel career advice and travel blog that was just for me, and it was just an enjoyable hobby to have, but it was creative, which I haven't done a lot of. I don't think I'm a very creative person, but anyway.
I think you're creative. I don't just think it. I know you're creative, but one of the things I would also say is that you're also very resilient. And I think that, I know your parents, you come from kind of amazing, resilient parents. I did not come from that. I have learned to be resilient, and I have...
Which you can do, which is amazing.
Yeah, you can absolutely learn to do it.
Build it.
And I also have an appreciation that some of my best superpowers come from being raised hyper vigilant. It's not maybe I have, you learn to harness those things so that they don't kill you. But, once again, like I said earlier, the idea that the crucible of where we came from brings us to where we are, and we have a choice of whether to address and make the best of those things. If it bleeds over, I can't take work home. I physically can't, because HIPAA,
Sure, you can't bring a chart home.
Yeah, nothing leaves this building. So it's more about not bringing it home emotionally. But
Right.
in my private practice, there will be times where if I see a client at the end of a 15-hour day and it's 9 p.m., every couple of months I will take a Saturday and I'll take 6 hours of a Saturday, close the door to my study, put my headphones on, and I'll churn through not only bills and other things that have to get done and, looking at retirement and banking, but I'll churn out those notes and make sure I'm, on course with my treatment plans for clients.
Right.
But that's very rare. It's not like it's every night. And I would want for everyone in whatever career you're in to not have to do that. And I think that's a difficult thing because electronics have made a lot of corporations feel like they can call people. It's interesting. Europe is passing laws right now. They're passing laws as we speak that employers cannot contact you after work hours by any means. And I think that's the way it should be. It's the way it always was in the past. It's only, in the last 30 years this has been happening.
And I want to say that it's not as if it hasn't ever happened to me as far as the bleed over and taking it home. And I know you already talked about how you had to, learn how to not take stuff home. It absolutely has, whether it's been a traumatic incident that I've been involved in or it's been something clinical, like working with individuals who offend sexually. That once I became a mom, I was like, oh my God, I'm thinking about this one case like all night or whatever. It happens. It happens here and there, but there are things you can do to sort of buffer that and help yourself bounce back from it easier. So
yeah, good question.
Here's a fun question again from our Instagram follower _m.aci. What's your favorite music to listen to when you don't need to get anything done?
Oh, I read that wrong.
How'd you read it?
I thought it was like, what's your favorite music to listen to when you're I
do need to get something done?
Yeah, I did.
Well, let's hear both your answers.
Okay, so that's interesting. Well, I'll tell you, it's interesting because my husband is a real musician and a music aficionado. And
wait, he's a musician?
Yeah, he plays piano. And you know what else? He plays accordion. Did I never tell you that?
What?
Yeah, I think that's what he's going to get for Christmas this year. He hasn't played in years, but how hilarious would that be? We could hook him and Deb up.
I know.
To a concert.
They need to do a duet.
But because of my ADD, I have discovered that I can put myself into an unbelievable work mode for writing evaluations and writing reports and doing that kind of work by using trance and electronic dance music.
I love you.
It just, because there's not a predominant melody, but there's a beat. And I also will use that with an app that I love, and I've been using it for 10 years. It got me through my dissertation and all my licensure studying, binaural beat Brainwave. And I turned you on to it for studying for the exams.
Yep.
Brainwave is this sort of pseudoscience. I don't know if it's real or not. If it's placebo effect. There's a setting for sleep that will knock me out. There's a setting for meditation. There's a setting for concentration, and you can combine it with music. Mm-hmm. So that's when I want to get things done. When I don't want to get anything done or I'm relaxing, it's Pandora Pink Martini.
Ooh.
Pink Martini channel is awesome. Pink Martini, if you guys don't know, it's fantastic. It's this group of musicians that all met each other like over 20 years ago at Berklee. They were all like theater and music students at Berklee, I think.
Okay.
And they were all into kitschy retro lounge music. And so they realized that they were all musicians, and they do this fantastic, kitschy but amazing world cocktail music. So they take aspects from all over there at the Hollywood Bowl. Do you ever listen to them?
No, I've never even heard of them.
I can't believe you haven't heard of Pink Martini.
No.
Oh my God, they're fantastic. They're fantastic.
Okay, on the way home tonight.
Yeah, put on the Pandora Pink Martini.
Okay, so when I don't need to get anything done, so I kind of thought of like, what is my go-to music when I'm just like, what do I want to listen to? God, I've already made one mention of Tupac and Biggie, but I am your classic 40-year-old basic bitch from Southern California. I love my 90s hip hop. I love my 90s hip hop. That would be my go-to, but even at this age, I am a huge EDM fan, and you know it. I mean, I go to my festival every year, and that's my thing, but to me, it's what I have on my speaker in the middle of summertime out at my pool all day long. And so when I'm thinking about like doing nothing, just laying in the pool or laying by the pool, that's absolutely what it's summertime to me, which is my favorite thing in the world.
So I'll confess also, is back in the day in the 80s and 90s.
When EDM started.
When I was partying with my best friends, with that group of partiers, like I have flashbacks to it. I have like full on neurological euphoric flashbacks. And
they're great, aren't they?
They're awesome. They are awesome. But it's great stuff. I mean, I enjoy it, but it does put me in, and I think it has to do with, it's not necessarily relaxing to me, but it focuses. Right. And for people that, if you don't have ADHD, but you have relatives or friends who have ADHD, it's really important to understand that focus can be so alien. The thing that comes to neuronormative people that, can just turn focus on and off, that it's so difficult for us at times. And I have cognitive behavioral skills that I've put in place for decades that really work for me. But when the music turns on and flips that switch in my brain to help me focus, it's euphoric.
It is.
You feel fantastic because you're in flow. Mm-hmm. It's just amazing.
Well, and I didn't think about this until now that you and I both have dance backgrounds as well. So I wonder if that's a piece of just like it fulfills something for us as well. So.
Well, I talked about my cousin who lives in my hometown, and her daughter is a ballerina with the company that I got a scholarship with generations ago in Alabama.
Oh, neat.
And she's an accomplished dancer, and she was writing. My cousin's daughter is an accomplished dancer, and my cousin was writing a blog for Alabama School of Fine Arts, or make something about like, hey, dancers, ex-dancers, how did dance change your life? And I wrote a really long piece about how I didn't know that I had ADHD then, and I swam competitively, but I didn't play other competitive sports except for track and field. Mm-hmm. And when I started dancing, my grades went up. All of my grades went up. Like, I had been a solid B student, and I went solidly into A range when I started dance training. So it and I wasn't raised in a house that had music. I mean, like, people listen to music, but it wasn't like, there are some homes that have music on all the time, which you should, because it's fantastic for your kids' development of math skills. But I can't say enough good things about having music in your life.
Yeah. And my favorites are trance and deep house, if anybody cares. Yeah. Okay. Let's get back to something more psychological here. So let's see. This is from our listener, Kat from Melbourne, Australia. And I know I said that right. Melbourne.
Melbourne? Is that the correct way to say it?
Okay. So Kat is referring to a documentary. It's called A Place for Pedophiles, and it was done by the BBC several years ago. Louis Theroux is the journalist that is sort of leading you through the documentary. And essentially, they are spending some time at Coalinga State Hospital here in California. Which
is in the Central Valley.
Coalinga State Hospital is in the Central Valley, middle of nowhere. And it is a place where we house our sexually violent predators. So the people who have been to prison for their sex crimes, and then they have been evaluated and determined that they have a mental health disorder that predisposes them to continuing to commit sex crimes. Therefore, we lock them up forever.
So just to add on to that, so what we're talking about is, say, SVP, a sexually violent predator, is adjudicated for a crime. They may be given a sentence of 18 years for a crime, and then maybe it gets adjusted down for whatever reason. They complete their term. There is a process in place to evaluate whether or not they are still a danger to the community, which means they're done with their prison sentence, but they can still be locked up now in a psychiatric facility.
Right.
It's still incarcerated. I will say this. If you're going to be locked up someplace, Coalinga is it's the newest of the facilities, and it's kind of amazing.
Well, it looks like a mall.
Yeah.
You see it in the documentary. You walk down the hallway, and there's a barber shop, and then there's, other little stores, and the music room. They have a full, you can learn to play an orchestra instrument. It's kind of amazing. Yeah. So individuals in this program can choose whether or not to participate in sex offender treatment. It's a phase program. And essentially, if you go through all the phases successfully, you can work your way back out into the community. Now, you're heavily monitored if you're back out in the community, and that's kind of the final phase. Most individuals make it out into the community through legal means, through legal, fighting loopholes, different ways. Not many people. 30% of the population actually opts to go through the program. 70% are just sitting there saying, I'm going to be here forever. You can't make me do treatment. So interesting. So this documentary is about Coalinga State Hospital. I mean, I know people who work there now that I went to school with. I've known people who have worked there and left. So there's an interaction in which a inmate, I don't even think they call them inmates. I don't know what they call them.
They're patients, right?
Or
residents?
Sure. Residents might be it. But he is speaking with the journalist and the head psychologist of Coalinga State Hospital. And essentially they're talking to him because he walked out of his polygraph. So they get polygraphed amount of times a year to determine sort of where they are in treatment. And so they're basically asking him, interviewing about this. And he says, I was going to lie on the polygraph. I actually have some things to hide. I was afraid I was going to lie, and I was going to try to trick it. I put antiperspirant on my hands. So the psychologist who's standing there, she asks him, tell us what went into your decision-making to be deceptive. And his reaction is what our listener is asking about. She says, my question to you is, what is your professional and therapeutic response to this clinician's behavior or response? Is she overreacting to Mr. Price's behavior, or is it reasonable and therapeutic response to his behavior that a layperson such as myself or the journalist is not aware of? So she asks, what went into your decision-making? Good question for the documentary. And he immediately starts to shift blame and says, well, I don't even know anything about the polygraph. I was supposed to have an orientation. I haven't had an orientation. I asked for an orientation. No one's given that to me. And I was nervous, and I was probably going to end up saying more than I wanted to say. So she then responds by pointing out that he's becoming defensive. And I'm not saying his tone is high. He's not yelling. He's not being threatening in any way. But she points out, you're getting defensive. You're starting to blame others, which we know is a cognitive distortion. When people aren't ready to take responsibility for their own stuff, they start pointing fingers. And she says, you're starting to point fingers. And he comes back with a pretty snarky attitude and says, I haven't even begun to finger point. Let's not go there. And then he says, I think we better leave it alone. And it's a very neutral tone. So I could get how later she's being interviewed and she says that he was being very aggressive. And I don't think it's aggressive in the way someone who hasn't worked with inmates would get. I think the turning point is when he says, I haven't begun to finger point. To me, he's backed up in a corner.
Yeah.
He's feeling super defensive, and now he's starting to challenge a little bit. He's sort of starting to show his bravado, and how can I kind of stick one to this person that's making me feel uncomfortable in a subtle way.
One of the things that you're talking about that I want to reflect on is when it comes to aggression, you're illustrating that he's backed into a corner, and it's about the content is what makes it aggressive. It's not the affect. I think that may be what Kat is responding to, is that he doesn't raise his voice. He's maintaining an overall neutral body affect and tone, but this is a clinician that has worked closely with him for a period of time. She's a specialist in this particular area, and so it may be that the layperson doesn't recognize those markers, right?
Yes, and I think when he says, I think we better leave it alone, to me, that's a complete veiled threat.
Oh,
it's
that
kind
absolutely
of like
is.
Or what?
Yeah.
Comes after
He's
that.
actually saying, you better leave it alone.
Right. And he continues to be oppositional by saying, well, you're not my clinician. Because she's not. She's not his clinician. She's the head of the department, and she's obviously the one showing this journalist around. But he starts to say, well, you're not even my clinician. I don't know why you're asking me this. Why? I don't even know why you're here. Can someone tell me why you're here? Oh, man. That's something that can easily get under your skin. And this doctor, I've taken trainings with her, and I know her from that community. She's just like our other supervisor Leah. You were talking about, where you and I would be like, oh, on the inside. She is cool as a cucumber. She does come off as very just non-reactive herself. And I think that can exhibit maybe being cold or sort of overreacting when she's using these terms. But she's using them in a very clinical risk assessment type way that I absolutely would verbally or probably in a report.
And I think you're hitting on something really important about you and I. I mean, part of the reason, whether it's coming from a performance background, entertainment, creativity, we're also sharing aspects of our lives. I'm known to be pretty gregarious. I mean, I think people get an idea of kind of who I am. Yes, certainly I have a veneer, the mask persona that we all have a version of that we present. But this is, you guys get a really good sense by listening to this podcast of who we are. So we're representative of only one small spectrum of clinical skills and clinical abilities.
Absolutely.
And, when you give the example of her possibly coming off in that way, when you're working with a violent population, you absolutely have to be non-reactive.
Yep.
It is absolutely necessary. And it was one of the things, like, I remember one of the stories I tell about interviewing for Leah is I came out of that interview, and look, I'm a dancing monkey. Like, I know how to interview. I know how to pull crap out of my butt and sparkle with jazz hands. Yep. I can do a good interview.
And you get feedback in the moment from people, the head nodding, the smiling.
Right, because I come from a hypervigilant household. Sure. I know how to read a room. And now I reinforce what I'm reading. And Leah didn't give us anything.
Nope.
Like, I walked out of there going, I didn't think immediately, oh, they hated me. I was like, what the fuck just happened? Like, they didn't play my game.
How did I do?
Yeah, so it was amazing, and I think that it's an illustration of what was particularly interesting to Kat about this interaction is that this clinician was being completely appropriate and professional with those boundaries, and what you saw was, like you said, veiled threats and defensiveness. Because look, you know what? What he could have done is he could have just come clean.
Sure.
Yes, I have been masturbating to these images. I fantasized again. Just freaking come clean.
Right.
Come, like you're locked up in Coalinga. You're not going anywhere right now anyway. It's not going to be worse
than anything we've heard today.
It is not. I mean, that's the baseline there. In fact, you might even have gotten a couple of brownie points for like, okay, you know what? He actually told on himself.
Oh, completely. That that went way further for me than someone just denying everything.
Right.
Because at least you know what you're working with. But yeah, I had actually forgotten about this documentary. I had seen it, and then when I went back and I was like, oh, okay, of course I know what this is because I know Dr. D'Orazio, and it was really neat to sort of see that. But I also have interacted with her personally, so I know what kind of clinician she is, and she knows her shit, and she's really good at it. And she is also in this documentary. I mean, she's an administrator at that point. So I also understand the victim, or not victim, Jesus. I also understand Mr. Price and what's happening with him. He has a camera in his face, asking him yet again about something that is incredibly shameful. And he does have a clinician there that's not his clinician. And, it's kind of this higher authority figure there. But everything she's asking is pretty proper, and any other therapist would have asked it, even his own probably. Right. So it's a very interesting documentary. I totally
and also aside from the shame, there's nobody there at Coalinga that does not have a significant diagnosis on the spectrum of paraphilias.
Oh yeah,
it's a real thing. Yeah. So there's a lot, and I'm glad you especially pointed out the camera thing. I am very aware that even with the advent of reality television, there are people that will assume that they are who they are all the time, consistently, and you don't understand that the effect of being observed immediately changes your interaction with the world around you.
They talk to other clinicians. In one of the first ones, it's super awkward. You're like, Jesus, does this person even know what they're doing? It is, and I'm sure they're better clinicians than what they present with them with a camera in their face when they're being asked these questions. And I can't imagine. And it's such high-profile work.
Well, it's a bunch of psychologists. Like, why would you expect that any of them have had any experience being interviewed on camera? And also, it's a state facility. So if I'm just talking about my own experience and what I do, I'll sit and talk for 90 minutes, as apparently like we're at 90 minutes right now. But if I am representing the government agency that I work for, you better believe that I'm under pressure because I represent.
Yeah.
In that moment, I represent a much larger entity than me. And believe me, you say the wrong thing or you give
There's nervous laughter. There's just stuff that is super uncomfortable, and it makes them look bad. It makes them.
That's too bad.
It is. But
I feel like they would have been better served by being better if someone had prepared them. Absolutely. Ironically, he's there saying, "Well, no one prepared me for the polygraph." Like, well, they should have prepared the clinicians for that as well.
Yeah, exactly. But check it out. You can find it online. All right, last question. This comes from Rebecca at Dialogue. She wanted to know, do we see therapists personally?
Oh, right. Yes, I do. In my small private practice, I see 2 therapists, and it's amazing work. I mean, I would not say...
she wants to know if we go to our own therapist.
Oh, I read that wrong.
Yeah.
I go for a tune-up at least twice a year, and every couple of years I'll go for about 6 weeks at a time. But I also had close to 18 years of weekly therapy.
Consistent.
With like maybe a 6-month break here or there if I was out of the country on tour or something.
Right.
But it was phenomenal. It changed my life.
Do you think it's important as a clinician? Do you think that has anything to do with it, or if it's more just personal, individual?
I think it depends on who you are. There are some people that don't need it. I mean, I quickly learned that for me, long before I came into this field, that therapy was peeling an onion.
Right.
And I just wanted to know more. Mm-hmm. Like I wanted to know more as I learned more, and I learned to deal with, what we all, the sort of the toxic shame that all of us carry in some way. As I started to peel that away, there are other things. It's like, oh, well, I took care of this, but that now, in taking care of it, has changed my perspective on this and this and this, and now I got to look at it.
Right.
And I loved it. I mean, what was amazing to me is, like, I have good friends to this day that don't get therapy. Like, they just don't get it. And one who actually, interesting, our friendship ended many years ago, but he was going through a really, really hard time. And I was like, you got to go to therapy. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. And he came out doing the nope. And he went to a great therapist, like one of the best in town. But I realized, now I look back on it and I go, oh, he just wasn't ready.
Sure.
He wasn't ready.
Sure. I started going to therapy in grad school because we have to.
Right.
30 hours we have to do?
Yeah.
I think it
California is one of the only places that requires it, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. I think it should always be required. So as part of
your doctorate, you have to do a certain amount of hours in therapy to see what it's like. It actually coincided for me with my second officer-involved shooting that I was involved in.
Right.
So it was, I found someone who had done work with trauma. She had actually been married to a police officer as well, had done some work with law enforcement. So it was a really good fit. And after my 30 sessions were over, I continued to see her for a bit until a lot of that resolved for me. But that's the only time that I've been. I think it's so interesting because you always hear the mantra, every good psychologist has their own psychologist. And I like that you said, not everyone has to just because you're a clinician. And
it doesn't necessarily, for some people, it doesn't necessarily make them a better clinician.
No. If you have those other self-care things in place, it can definitely be part of it. But I think just different ways of taking care of yourself.
I will say this, that this was an interesting phenomenon. I did not see it as a doctoral student. As a master's level student for my MFT, I was blown away in our orientation when there was a wonderful woman at Antioch, Los Angeles, Amy Ezel, and I don't know if she's still there, but she was like, every quarter she was the one ushering the new students in and giving them like about 4 hours of this intro, and it was always very detailed, and she held people to a high standard, like, look, you're in a master's program, we expect you to be able to work a computer. That kind of thing that, like, of course you would.
Sure.
But some people would be, I'm going to write my assignments on an old shovel with a piece of charcoal. I mean, there are some people that were that much Luddites. But the thing that blew me away was how many people got completely irked that they had to go to therapy.
Interesting.
In order to graduate.
That's so fascinating
They were
to me.
pissed off. Why would I need to go to therapy? And I would think, how the hell did you even consider becoming a therapist if you haven't been in therapy? And then later, as I progressed as a professional, I found out exactly what those people were about.
Wow.
And I'll tell you, I would never refer someone to a clinician like that. I just wouldn't refer.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. That's episode 34.
That's a lot.
A lot of good listener questions. If you guys want to send us questions anytime, we will file them away for another episode like this. But this was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and we have another episode coming out in a couple of weeks, and then the new year will be upon us, and we've got a lot going on in 2020. Like, we're excited and terrified at the same time. We've got so much going on for LA Not So Confidential, and
other just work stuff. We have another bleed over work thing that we're doing, possibly with retired Special Agent Fitzgerald. So
we owe him another episode too, because we let that get away. So that as we prepare for it, we got to follow through with that.
Yep.
So we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. On what?
On LA
Not So
Confidential. Bye, guys.
Folks. Have a great holiday.